Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome again to another episode, to another new season of True Positive. My name is Lawrence Michilwa, recording from Nairobi, Kenya. In this first episode of 2026, I'm privileged to be hosting the team from Mauritius, Cyberstorm. In this episode, we'll be going over the team, Cyberstorm, what they are doing, what they're achieving. We'll look at the challenges facing such communities in Africa. We'll see how they're being very deliberate with promoting gender diversity and inclusion, and also, just importantly, go through their origin story. So, how do they build up Cyberstorm from ground up? The challenges they went through, and up to now, the amazing impact they're having in the region as far as vulnerability disclosure is concerned in the open source space. I'm hoping, dear listeners, you'll find this session one of many, not only productive, but very insightful in regards to it giving you, and not even an overview, it giving you a bird's eye view of the amazing work a lot of communities in Africa are doing, and how we have amazing talent, amazing resources, amazing resilience, and amazing spirit of collaboration. Have a listen. Okay, we are good to go. So, what's the best way to do the introduction here, given that you've already been talking? So, I'll jump straight into it and welcome listeners who will be listening to this podcast and introduce our first guest for 2026, Mr. Logan from Cyberstorm MU. Logan, I just jump straight into it. If you could give us, I don't know, a brief description or a verbose description for people in the community who are not aware of the amazing work Cyberstorm MU is doing, but also aware of some of the co-members, I believe, who are actually building that community. So, over to you.
So, thank you very much, Lawrence. It's quite an honor for me to be part of this podcast. So, I'm Logan from Mauritius. That's how most people know me. For a long time, I worked solo. So, around 2015, I decided to start a community in Mauritius of InfoSec enthusiasts. After approximately 2 years, we decided to branch off and start a new one. Due to various reasons, we call it Cyberstorm.nu, which is what everybody knows right now. So, just a little bit of background about myself. I'm a believer, like many in the continent, of Pan-African idealism. Especially when it comes to technology. So, I believe that we Africans, because Mauritius is part of Africa, I believe that we Africans should first of all build our own technology, own our technology stack, and although it's difficult, I agree with that, understand line by line code of what's actually running in African digital infrastructure. That's one of my core beliefs. So during my time, I've worked with African institutions, and I'm pretty proud of that. I mean, for me, it's very, very important that I was able to join an organization that shares the same value as me. So I do not believe in Africans outsourcing their security to others. So let's be very, very clear on that. So due to that belief, I've got other people together in Mauritius, and we started an experiment basically saying, can we get people in Mauritius to actually start contributing to open source project with a focus on security from a more practical point of view? Let me explain that. We've got a lot of universities in our region. Is that correct, Lawrence?
Correct.
Yes. So we've got a lot of them. And they're very good at teaching the basics of computer science and everything. We've all been through those courses, right? There are some really bright guys who were able to avoid university and learn those things on their own. But generally, I suggest most people go to university to get that solid knowledge. So the second thing is that our infrastructure in Africa isn't that very good when it comes to internet and even computer networks in general. So that means that our students don't have the opportunity, basically, to learn on cutting edge hardware. We can have a long discussion about this, about why it's currently the current status, right? We could have this discussion over and over again. But the core problem remains that I think that the professionals in our field, like the elder guys, like the guys in their late 20s, 30s, and even 40s, we do not spend enough time teaching young people, the young Africans. We don't. It's a fact, right? It's hard to find time with a demanding job. It's hard to find time to train the next generation. But since we don't have that good infrastructure, and universities realistically can only teach the basics, so Cyberstorm was basically formed around the idea: can a group of older engineers teach young people fun things to do but go beyond what they're taught in university? And initially, we weren't sure that this was going to work out. To be very, very honest with you, we weren't sure this was going to go anywhere. So we took our patience. We started teaching students the basics of Linux, using the command line, very basic things like booting a VM, make sure that networking actually runs. And you'd be surprised at the number of students that we found out who didn't even know that, despite having a degree in computer science. I mean, even in Mauritius. Okay, and I don't know about your experience, Lawrence. I mean,
No, I've seen it. So, first, totally in agreement with what you said. I won't go, I'll say from late 20s to early 40s, professionals in that group, especially professionals who are excelling, we are just not creating enough time to mentor and provide the right capacity to this crop of to the younger professionals. So either students in university or even students out of university who are trying to get jobs. I joke with my colleagues and tell them that in my previous role, I was recruiting, I believe, for a junior system administrator for Linux. And I recall this specific candidate wanted to convince me how they were able to SSH to a web server from a browser. I was like, okay, maybe there's something I honestly don't know. Okay, so show me, how do you SSH into a web server, into a server through the browser? And it just turns out that they were not really aware of those fundamental things that, okay, if you're going to do an SSH, as in this is the right way, this is how you go about it. These are the standard protocols, these are the ports you need to use, and this is the command syntax. So, total agreement with you.
Yes. So I get the same things, honestly, even in Mauritius. Like you have bright students who are able to learn on their own, but you have the others who are struggling or basically left behind, and they just do basically the bare minimum to get their degree. Sure. And I'd rather much focus on the latter category than the bright guys, because I don't think that the bright guys need that much of mentoring, to be honest.
Yeah, true. I don't know. I'm conflicted there. I'll say all of them need mentorship, but they require different sorts of mentorship. So how I think about it is if you're not really good, because I wasn't that smart even academically, and I know there are people who are very smart. So if you are very smart, you have that intellectual capacities, your IQ is off the roof. Maybe such people, my focus to them even right now will be, I want to scale your capabilities. So I don't want you to be doing these redundant things. For you, I want you to be on the bleeding edge, thinking over innovations. Now, for this other group set of people, I'm like, okay, let's teach you how do you become very good as system admin. Then hopefully through that, you master this skill set very well to a point that now you are at that stage of, okay, I've been doing this thing this way. Can I introduce automation? Then you master automation to the point of, okay, you start handling challenges over, okay, I have a script that is doing automation, but I want now multi-threading. I want it to detect memory leaks. So for me, I say all of them need mentorship, just different types of mentorship based on where they are at that point.
Yes, exactly. You pretty much explained it, Lawrence. So in Mauritius, we have this problem, but like the rest of Africa, right, where parents are working, they tend to outsource education only to educational institutions, and you will even have professionals that don't have time to teach their own children, which I think is hard. And then I understand that. So we rolled out our sleeves. We got a bit of sponsorship, and I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Internet Society, who was one of the first believers in the project, in the Cyberstorm. At the time, it was more like a sort of initiative. We never thought that it would go beyond 2 years. To be very, very honest with you, we never thought that it could go beyond 2 years. Because you know how things are, right?
True.
Initially, everybody is very excited, then people get less excited, and then people just quietly drop off, right?
True.
Yeah. So it so happened at the time that Cyberstorm started off, there was this thing called so there was a hack basically that took place in the United States. So it was pretty bad because there was a ransomware attack on an outdated Java library. And although the agency didn't disclose fully all the details, word of mouth leaked to various people saying it was basically a dependency that hadn't been updated.
Okay. Are you at liberty just maybe to share a little bit more about that specific breach? Some more.
So let me get the link. So it was it happened in the United States, in California. So basically, what happened was one of the metro system, I believe, was basically cracked through not some very complex thing, but it's more about a dependency that hadn't been updated.
Okay.
So the company ran for a long time like this until there was a ransomware, basically penetration inside their system, and then what happened was there was a ransomware attack. Okay, and when this happened, one person from Google, Justine Tenney, she started looking at open source project and said, it's something very basic, but it's not too difficult to fix. It's basically changing the dependency inside the version and just making sure that it runs.
Okay.
Right? And she was like, she got other people involved, okay, at Google, and her team grew from 2 people initially to 50 people. So they would use their 50% of time to actually do those security updates in various open source projects against that specific vulnerability that had been used to attack the metro system. So they call the hackathon Operation Rose Hub.
Oh, okay.
So if you see those references on Cyberstorm,
yeah, I've seen them. I think there's one. Do you have an operation happening today? I know this week and last week I saw a couple.
Yes. So this hackathon has such a huge impact on us at the time because we realized, I mean, the senior team of Cyberstorm realized, wait a second, this is not too complicated to do. It requires some basic knowledge of programming and some knowledge about basically getting something to run. This is something that students can do. Okay, so what we found out is that um, by the time they were done Operation Rose Hub, they had batched, I think, if my memory serves me right, they had batched over 3,000 open source projects. And to this day, it remains one of the most visible work that Google has done that's not directly tied to Google. It was just like doing open source security for the general good. And Justin Tunney is one of our heroes at Cyberstorm. I mean, when we look at that, we say, this is really inspiring for us. And can we do the same thing? So we started off with smaller vulnerabilities, basically.
Yeah.
So we started with something called Operation JASK, which was basically fixing one-liner in Bitcoin related script. But it was basically around sanitization. So students would be walking to the vulnerability, we would explain to them what was it about, they would try to reproduce it. It wasn't too difficult.
Okay.
Of course, some students had difficulties, which happens, right? Not everybody learns at the same rate. So basically, what happened was we did those little hackathons. We would get sponsorship, venue sponsorship over the weekend, and the students would spend time working together with older engineers, basically, in the industry, and they would learn things on the fly. So it would not be textbook learning, because that's what they were already doing in school, right? So we would really challenge them with doing sort of more like hands-on practical. And many of those students would go on to have pretty good careers later on. Like they would go on to occupy big position in Mauritius, but also outside of Mauritius. But it all started from Cyberstorm, basically. So when we started doing that, very, very quickly, word spread around the island, and we started getting more people getting interested in joining us. So small, when you so my lesson for most communities in Africa, if you want to start somewhere, don't start small.
Or don't start small.
Sorry, you're right. Don't start big.
Yeah.
Start small.
Start small.
So one of my good friends in the IXP community, don't know if you've heard about him, Nishal Goverdan. He builds internet exchange point around Africa. He says when you want to start an internet exchange point, start small. It's the same thing with open source community and security infosec.
Yeah.
Start with small problems. The small problems can be tackled easily. Once you get confidence in this, once you get experience in this, you can later on move on to more complex problems, like, for example, post-quantum cryptography, where we Cyberstorm implemented hybrid key exchange that can resist to post-quantum cryptography. So, yeah, start small. So, those first hackathons, those small changes that we made, were reviewed, criticized, and merged into open source project. Yeah. The next thing that happened, there was this incident. I don't know if you heard, if you remember this, the Log4j vulnerability.
Oh yes, I do. Yeah, for people running Elastic Stack, they had a very interesting day. Anything, I think Java, anything that had Java in it had issues with Log4j.
Yes. So when Log4j hit, a lot of Cyberstorm members at the time were enjoying their holidays. And when Log4j hit, it was like, everybody was like, oh, what is happening there? What is happening there? And since unfortunately it it happened during the holidays.
Yeah,
okay?
it did.
It did. You remember this one? It happened during the holidays, and not that many people were actually paying attention to
Yes.
this because many people were off and they were mostly on monitoring duties. But those that were actually monitoring those critical servers with Elastic servers, they knew something wrong was going on. So what happened basically during Log4j, Cyberstorm got together and we started looking at dependencies. So one of the core guys of Cyberstorm at the time, Nitin, who's actually been one of the co-founders of Cyberstorm, he was like...
I knew a guy called Nitin. I think the last time I talked to him was in the US.
Yeah.
Is it the same Nitin?
Yes, that's it. That's it. Exactly. So Nitin is actually the guy who said, this thing, we need to pay attention to this. And I wasn't initially convinced, and it was the holidays, and a lot of us were like, somebody else will figure it out, this one.
Yeah.
So when this happened, we were like, let's just have a look and do some basic security audits, reading code, reading dependency chain, and just look at the current status of open source in general regarding Log4j. When we did our initial audit, turned out that there were a lot of open source projects that were using Log4j. And we knew we had hit a bunch of things.
Yeah.
So what we actually started doing was reviewing as many open source projects as possible, determining which one were vulnerable, which one weren't. And when we found out, we had a lot of work on our hand, and it was the holidays. So what we would do is that some of us would be basically porting, and at the same time writing the security patches. It was really fun because it was totally remote, because nobody had planned for this.
Yeah.
So everybody was remote, and we were just like, this is really serious, not only for Africa but the whole world. So we started this hackathon called Operation L4J, where we patch over hundreds of open source projects that had Log4j.
But Logan, so to cut you short, so when I hear you mention that you are able to basically analyze the Log4j library, find all dependencies, when I think about this, I'm like, this is some really, really complex things your team is doing, and like it's what rockstar kind of level thing. Can you just break that down? I'm hoping it's easier than I think, so that for guys interested in, they can come in.
But we enjoy. So there was this. Bev is here. Bhuvanesh is here.
Yes.
Yes, Bev. Hope you're doing well.
Sorry for my lateness. I was caught up with personal stuff. I apologize for that.
No worries.
So Bhuvanesh is one of the recent guys who actually work on cryptography. Bhuvanesh, can you introduce yourself for all our listeners?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Bhuvanesh, and it's been almost 8 years since I have joined Cyberstorm. Can you all hear me properly?
I think there's a bit of static.
Oh, wait. Let me see if you can fix that.
So Bev is one of the young guys who just joined us, and he's been very sort of active in the hackathons. So very good question. So to explain to this, Lawrence, Operation Rosehub, the guys at Google, they had pioneered a technique using BigQuery analytics. It's basically you do a large query over a very large data set.
Okay.
And at the time, it was something very new, back in 2016 or 2017. Okay? But the way they approach the problem on the Google side we use the same techniques as them, basically. So it was basically BigQuery analytics and trying to automate as much of the vulnerability detection as possible. And when you do that on large data sets such as GitHub, it can be a bit challenging. But again, you need to understand how big data works. So some of us had prior experience with big data. So we basically took that experience and also learning from Operation Rosehub and Justine and her team, what they were doing, we learned from them to be able to apply the same thing during the hackathon. So L4J is a good example of this. We were really inspired. I mean, I always mention this. We, Cyberstorm, didn't start this off.
Yeah.
The guys from Google did. Justine and her team, full credit to them. But we were inspired to take the same concept. And when Log4j hit, a lot of those security fixes that happen in open source project were actually done from Africa, from Mauritius, by a team from Mauritius.
That is amazing.
So this is one of big moments, because there were guys from really big US companies like Adobe, for instance. They were realizing that all of those security patches were coming from basically the same team. And they figured out that it was from Mauritius. And to the point, at one point when we were doing those security fixes, they would put on smileys on the GitHub, because we were realizing that we were keep track of all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Bev, can you hear us? Again, I think you join us in a few minutes. We're not hearing you. So yeah. So you need to have some kind of experience with analytics in order to do that.
Okay.
And yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, so I'll introduce myself again.
There's still some static though.
Yeah, I can't seem to get rid of it. It's a problem on my microphone, I think. I have to change it. Okay. So, is it audible though? Like, can you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think, I can understand and hear you.
Okay, so my name is Bhuvanesh, and as I said, I have joined Cyberstorm. It's been almost 8 years, and during my year, I have actually joined a few hackathons, among which we worked on the post-quantum cryptography, and this was a big learning curve for me. It's something that they did not teach in the university. It's like a golden opportunity for me, because not every group or every company will give you the hands, like the action behind the post-quantum cryptography. It's just theory everywhere. No one wants to teach you exactly how it works,
Sure.
the concept behind it. It's all theory, but no one is there to teach you the physical part of it. So what I did during the hackathon was basically I tested if the version they have put there is there. For example, we have Logan and a few others worked on X25519 MLChem 768, and we tested if it's really there, if it is present in almost every browser. For example, Facebook, it was even spotted in the Cyberstorm's website. And then, so far, it's one of my biggest achievements, actually. One of the biggest. And I'm looking forward to work more with Cyberstorm, to invest more, to be more active, and just keep the learning curve and the opportunity keep rising.
Mute yourself, so that you can, when you're not speaking. Okay, good. So Yes, so I tried to, for those who didn't quite understand what Bev basically said. So he was working during on the hackathon, not on the coding side, but on actually testing the code that we wrote. So there was a project called so there was this thing called CNCF,
Okay.
Cloud Native. You probably heard of it, the Cloud Native platform. So we implemented post quantum key exchange for something called Minu, which is one of those cloud native solutions. So we basically implemented it, but it needed testing for testing. So Burb and his team of first year university students built the test case for doing that.
Wow.
And along the way, they had to learn about command line, compiling from source, doing port checks, seeing, looking at the initial TLS handshake. So they had a lot to learn in basically 2 days. So it was quite intensive. And Bev, how tired were you when it was over?
Actually took the day off university the next day. So basically we worked for during Saturday and Sunday, and then I had to take the day off on Monday because I was really tired. I needed a lot of sleep. My eyes were tired. I just need sleep and sleep and sleep.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Bav. So maybe something for Bav just to get a bit of context for our listeners. What is your background from, I don't know, an academic point of view? If you're already working in industry, what are your area of focus? So that for guys who are actually interested in pursuing these, so for example, anything in crypto, I think it will be good for them to know that, okay, if I'm already doing a program in computer science, maybe I stand a chance. If I'm doing biotechnology, I worked with someone who was doing what I think they were doing a course in the sciences, not the technology side, but the medical side of science. He was working on DNA, and he later found himself doing reverse engineering. And I asked him that, how do you move from splicing DNA to splicing malware? And he told me that if you look at it, it's the same thing. You are looking things at a very low level. So for me, it's just pattern recognition. So I was able to borrow my pattern recognition from my medical field to now my malware and reverse engineering career. So I don't know about if there's anything you can share from a background point of view.
Okay, well, of course, from my academic point of view, I'm not really a very bright student, like the top student is. So I'm not like that. I'm simple, but I am focused. I know my goals. I know what I need to have. I have everything set. I have planned everything. I just need to put the effort, to take the initiative, take the risk. Any opportunity that I have, I will take. I will seize anything just to achieve them. For example, my field of study is cybersecurity. I'm doing my bachelor's in it, and I've always been piqued about technology, and the cybersecurity was just the starting point, and to actually invest myself more in the technology part, but the gap that filled it was Cyberstorm. Like the university just made it a starting point for me. It's like turning on the vehicle. The university gave me a vehicle, they gave me the keys, they showed me how to start it, and then it was Cyberstorm that actually helped me push the car, actually, you understand? And all that I can say is, if you know your goals, you know what you need to do to have them, you should know what you have to do to have, how do I say this? You need to have a clear mindset, like like a clear view. You need to see your goal. You need to see yourself with your goal. For example, my goal is actually being one of the top candidates in technology, especially in cybersecurity. For example, hacking. There's blue team defense, red team defense. I want to be good in both of these so that no matter the situation that comes up, I can help. I can help not only myself, not only companies, but the society itself. Because if you analyze properly, the amount of attacks, the amount of cyber attacks is actually growing by minute, if not seconds. So it should be our generation or the next to actually put their money into the technology part, because technology will not stop advancing. It doesn't matter in which field. It can be science, it can be agriculture. There's always technology there. So there should be people who will be there to protect the society against any attacks that others might do. That's my motivation to further myself into it.
Thank you so much for that. Very insightful. And I'm wishing you all the best as you continue working on your goals and objectives.
Thank you, Lawrence.
Most welcome.
So yeah, both came to us pretty early. Well, other guys, I can give their names. They are slightly older than both, but just as equally talented. Atish Jutan, one of the core team members of Cyberstorm, he's only 21 years old, and Cloudflare actually, during the IETF hackathon, decided to give him the title of Technology Champion, despite him being only 21 years old.
Yeah.
Because he really knows the technology very well with AI authentication. He's one of it's really new field, so he really understands this. So there's Poshan Piru, who's one of the really smart guys that I know in the University of Mauritius, despite him also being 21 years old. I mentioned there are a couple of people, you already know Nitin, very good. So he's one of the founders of Cyberstorm. So there are also other people like Kushala Badu, who's actually who's a bit more senior, and he works at a bank, but unfortunately he couldn't join us. So maybe next time. He has some interesting stories as well. So basically, yeah, we also have I think a very good gender ratio in terms of we have one bright woman in our group. Her name is Meryl Lishing, and she's working on cybersecurity reconnaissance things using AI, MCP. Next time you should have her, because I think she's a good role model for women in Africa.
Oh, definitely, definitely.
Yeah, so we're actually having more and more women join our group, and we are moving towards this diversity. So I like to joke that Cyberstorm is a good representation of Mauritius, because Mauritius, we're a diverse country.
Yes.
Meaning you have all kind of ethnicities. You've been to Mauritius, right? All right. So Cyberstorm is reflective of Mauritius, and it's a mini Mauritius in the sense that it can show to the rest of Africa that despite having different groups, we are in the same continent and we are in the same country and we have the same challenges. So even though there's some level of competition, but there should also be a certain level of collaboration. And I think, as you wanted to know, I basically explained to you how we run our hackathons, and probably something that we would be happy to work with Kenyan InfoSec communities. I mean, we have, you probably heard of this, we have very good relationship with guys from South Africa, because they actually follow Cyberstorm a lot. We have good relationship with a guy from Tanzania as well.
Yeah.
Very strong community of Python developers over there.
Yes.
Yeah, a guy from the Nugs and the guy doing Python. They invited us remotely to do work with them, and we tried to get things working despite it being remote and during the COVID. I think we have many stories of our adventures in Africa. It would take more than one podcast, but basically, yeah. So yeah, I mean, Cyberstorm started out as an informal group, which is now moving towards the direction of having much more structure, much more roadmap. By moving into this direction, we lose a bit of, how can I say it, the sort of initial fun factor, in a sense, because you understand that, as a group becomes larger, you have to be more...
you need structure. And structure introduces rigidity to an extent.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but we are very careful in terms of balancing this, so that there's still the same fun factor, and also like since we had to fix our gender ratio, we had to sort of also teach young people to be more aware when they are dealing with people from opposite gender, or certain words that you can't use when you're compared to an all men's group. So that was something that we all had to go through, and also sort of moving towards a code of gender.
Yes. You have raised a very important point, and I think, well, this call is full of men, which is a good thing, but your team being very deliberate to educate fellow men and other gentlemen out there how to be appropriate with the opposite gender, I think that is a very key thing, and something that we actually don't see. So when I talk to ladies, if you look even in Kenya, not only in Kenya, so I'll say Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, I'll say it's not even an African thing, it's a global thing. So when you put men together, at times we tend to run our mouths left, right, and center, which can be very uninviting to the ladies. I'll say a joke that I might think is very innocent, but it's very offensive to the opposite gender. And unless someone tells you that, a lot of the people will think this is normal. I think I've been in sessions where I've had to remind people that, hey, we also have ladies in the room and we need to be inclusive. So I'm very happy that you guys are deliberately doing that. Sorry, I thought that was a very important point just to put across.
As I said, Meryl unfortunately couldn't join us, unfortunately, but she's probably the next person you should talk to on your podcast.
Okay.
And she can go around and explain to you what her work is about as a team member of Cyberstorm. So there are quite a few ladies who are seriously considering joining us and getting workers together. There are some challengers, of course, especially during hackathons, and given the culture of Mauritius, etc. So, but we're trying to work around this, and sort of, I think we can, at one point, I hope that we can have even more women joining Cyberstorm. And this is where I think, as I was explaining, Lawrence, we have to move from a sort of boys club initial type of thing to a more professional, structured group. And I think we're doing that well. Initially, there was a lot of things that would go through me and the team. We worked through that through having a core team at one point. And then, as you know, in any group, people sometimes decide to leave. Okay?
Yeah.
And we realized also that it was time to think about having a structure in place so that as people leave, we also build the foundation for people to also join later on, so that the group continues and the group is renewed. Bhuvanesh is a good example of this. There are over more young people who are actually going to join soon. And it's often the big challenge, I think, is finding enough work to keep everybody busy in terms of open source and infosec thing. So this is where we're trying to scale our approach. And okay, that's a long discussion. That's one of the reasons why we're getting into AI security, because it's one of those areas where it's very dynamic.
Yes.
Because I don't know if you keep track of vulnerabilities in AI, but it's basically almost every 2 weeks at this point.
But you know, when you talk of vulnerabilities in AI, maybe I'm too lazy. But I tell people, look, all vulnerabilities in AI, apart from prompt injection, I think a lot of them, or if not all of them, are basically just some sort of a prompt injection.
Yes, but the problem with that is basically around the way AI is implemented. Because it's basically a very dynamic input system that you basically run all kinds of queries. And when you have a system like this, you're bound to have all kinds of issues, basically.
Yes. True.
So you can't really. So the biggest problem is the information that gets stored there. And I always think also for African countries, we can have a very long discussion about this. One of the biggest challenges that's going to come with AI, especially with AI models, is basically how was this model trained?
Yes.
One. And the second thing is, what kind of data was it trained?
True.
Was there a backdoor in the training of data? And how do we actually check for this? So those are the big discussion points that are going to come with AI security. But in the interest of time, I'll go back to more simple things. So basically start small to any InfoSec community out in Africa. Cyberstorm, we are more than willing to work with everybody in Africa. We've done that through quite a few communities in South Africa, in Tanzania, in Congo, French speaking, because Mauritius is actually, we speak both languages,
Yes.
both French and English. So we're more than happy to work with English speaking as well. And some of us know Swahili as well. So that's
apple sour.
So yes, it's I think it's a good combination of not only the language but also the experience and also the mindset. Moving forward, I think the small hackathons are a good way for young InfoSec developers and also even experienced ones who do not have enough practical experience. They can sharpen their skills and they can learn new things. Sometimes those fixers, like when you do version bumping, they break things. And when they break things, you have to fix them. So you have to learn about the open source project, the conventions, how the code was built, and you might spend two. So Bhuvanesh has please go on, Bev. Tell us about your experience.
No. So the hackathon that I had, I wanted to point out that just like Logan said, we are trying to balance between having fun and coding. It's basically making coding fun. And during my first experience in the hackathon, it was the most fun I have ever had in what concerns coding, because we enjoyed talking to each other, we ate together, we joked. It was like a classroom where you're talking and working while the lecturer is explaining. It was something like that.
So basically, that's where we're growing. Our biggest challenges are scaling this, even in Mauritius, it's a tiny island. The venue, right now, we are limited. The various organizations are talking to us in Mauritius very quickly, the government, also private sectors, like really large companies. And also you have to see sort of how to make everybody happy.
Yeah.
So for sure, when you do a large hackathon, so you have to keep your sponsors happy. You have to basically what's in for them. Also, what's in for the university students, and basically what's in for others as well. So once everybody comes to agreement regarding the win-win. So one of the things that fundamentally differentiates between Cyberstorm and also the other organizations is that we don't do competitive hackathons.
Okay.
We do collaborative hackathons. And I'm slightly biased on this, so I'd rather let someone like Bhuvanesh explain the difference.
Competitive versus collaborative hackathons.
So competitive is basically more stressful, it's more intensive because you have to make everything right. There's no yes or no, you have to do it, you have to show it. If, for example, let's say I was the tester during the competitive hackathon, I have to make sure that the output is perfect. Otherwise, it will be over. But the collaborative hackathon, you get to learn and actually have hands-on experience. You get to learn. I found it very fascinating because it's very hard to actually learn while being in a competition.
Yeah, true. True. Thank you for that, Bhavesh.
Yes. So basically, we Cyberstorm. A lot of us we were very fortunate in that we joined open source projects. But one of them, the OpenBSD project, actually pioneered the concept of hackathons. And the thing that they pioneered was basically collaborative hackathons, where people would get together not to compete against each other, but rather work together towards solving problems that would benefit the OpenBSD project, which is one of the most secure operating systems on the planet. Right?
Yes.
Yes. So we learned from Theodorat and his team of OpenBSD in terms of pioneering security audits and always trying to find vulnerabilities in code. So we brought that culture from OpenBSD into Mauritius, basically, and we applied it in context of other open source project, not only OpenBSD. So basically, that's how it is going. We don't give prizes during hackathons. There's no like the first team, the second team, or third team, because it's basically the concept of everybody wins, because everybody contributes towards solving problems that benefits the whole world. So the sort of value that everybody gets out of it is code that's peer reviewed by open source project maintainers and that have been verified. And at the end of the day, you don't get a prize, but what you get is you start building your sort of professional profile very early in terms of people know you in Mauritius. Like, so we had a couple of companies contacting us after the hackathons, like, those guys are young, we're ready to hire them to work at our companies. And some of them I had to slow down some of those companies, and I was like, hold on, some of them are still minors, so
Wow.
they're not legally, yes, they're not legally allowed to work right now. So there are some interesting things like this that happen, and I think it shows to the private sector as well that we have to spend less time training those students, because those students pick up not only the academic skills but also the practical skills.
True. True.
So maybe, Bev, you want to add something? Yes, please.
From my point of view, I'm not really in the work field yet, but being in Cyberstorm, having the experience in hackathon, being not surrounded, but actually being in a group where everyone is a developer, they know what you're doing and you're just following their footsteps until you can just do it yourself. You lead yourself, you become your own leader. And that's one of the key points I think companies look for. They need someone who takes initiative, who can lead themselves, and they can, let's say, if any situation picks up, they will not panic or freak out, but instead they will just think how to tackle the problem, how to make the best out of it, while making it a learning curve for him. It's like, how do you see this? It's more of an opportunity. It's more like something you get to learn.
So yeah, but that's basically his experience. A lot of young people who join us, they have to adjust to the mindset. And yeah.
No, it sounds like a very, very interesting opportunity. I'm sure with the subsequent webinars, we'll still delve into it. I know, Bhavesh, Logan, when we were starting out, we were trying to figure out what's the format of the webinar. And I think I have more or less the right format. So, this first episode, it's basically been an introduction to you. So, we haven't really gone into any deep dive. But now I'm guessing for the next session, we might actually now do a bit of deep dive into just breaking down that program. It will be very keen to also just hear what are some of your success stories, what are some of the challenges that you have encountered, how have you navigated them, how do you ensure you have a win-win situation where your sponsors are happy, the team is also happy, and at the same time you're also not being fortunately or unfortunately turned into a modern day corporate where you lose the fun out of what is actually what you're trying to see. I think I saw Bev's hand up.
Bev, so I think Bev wanted to say something as well. Please go on, Bev.
Okay, it's out of context, but let me add that the first time Logan approached me and talked to me about Cyberstorm, I thought he was joking. I thought it was a scam because it was too good to be true. It was too good to be true. I thought it was a scam. I thought he was just joking, but when I got in, it was actually it was kind of a risk I took. I did not know if it was a scam or it was a joke. So, but yeah, I took the risk, and I'm glad I did. I learned so much during the let's say 1 year. I learned a lot during that 1 year, and I hope to learn more with Logan and my other teams, other people in the group, and that's it.
I'm looking forward to it. I know I'm almost out of time. Maybe as a way of helping us wrap this up, I should have started this off. Logan, tell us a little bit about yourself. So, I don't know, career background, academic background, and everything in between that as we start wrapping up.
Okay, so I've always been somewhat of a geek, in the sense that I started computers early, maybe too early, because it did negatively impact on over school subjects.
Okay.
So I would basically focus only on what the things that I cared about in computers, and tend to not give enough effort into.
When did you start using computers then? At what age, if I may ask?
So I was one of so my family was one of a few families to actually get a computer very early on.
Okay.
Back when in Africa, people didn't quite understand what it was about.
Okay.
Okay, so I was very fortunate because one of the family members brought one from the UK into our house. I think that changed my world.
True.
Okay. So when that computer broke down, it was an Amiga A500 computer. It broke down. It really teared me apart because I had gotten so used to it. So at some point, my parents, what they did was actually getting a loan for a computer, to buy a computer. Back when everybody thought this was crazy idea.
True.
And I'm glad they did. So very quickly I started playing around, and I was playing games, and I was crushing Windows. I was trying to understand how it works, basically. So that's when things got interesting, and at some point I joined. So I was studying, and at some point what happened was, if you think about it clearly. So at one point I heard about Linux from my father. So he had read about it in a magazine, and he told me, Windows doesn't have a source code, but Linux does. And I was like, what is Linux?
Was your father also in the tech space?
Yes, he was. He was.
Okay.
So what he was actually doing was, like, there's something called Linux, and he read about it in a magazine, and he told me, about it, and I was like, hold on, a whole operating system source code available.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, that's very interesting. So what happened was, at some point I joined a group known as the Linux User Group of Mauritius, and I'm very thankful to a lot of those guys. They were much older than me, but back when nobody knew about it, the Linux User Group was the go-to group in Mauritius if you wanted to have Linux CDs, and I wanted to get my hands on those Linux CDs. So one of the guys there, who became a very good friend, Ajay Ramjatan, he was one of the first guys that I sort of had a very long relationship with, even despite the fact that I was fairly young.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot from him, because I think he's one of the best sysadmins in the island, because he really understands the essence of what it means to be a Unix system, because he learned a lot of it. So there were a couple of people there. I don't remember everybody. I'm really sorry if you're here. So there was Ajay, there was Sylvan, who would end up co-founder of hackers.mu. So there were other people as well who were there, and it was a fun time, right? And they had access to bandwidth, and they were able to download a lot of the things that I needed. So and we also do presentation and things like that. So the Linux User Group is really at the time one of the open source pioneering groups of Mauritius. So at some point I was working in a company, and they basically hired me to do sysadmin work. So when I joined in, I was helping them with setting up the servers, and they realized that actually I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
Because I had prior experience using Linux at home. So at some point, what happened was there was an attack on one of those servers, and a production server, and it was one of the old Red Hat servers.
Yeah.
So it was one of our first tasks was actually doing security audit and figuring out how they actually were able to put their payload on that old Linux system.
Okay.
So what I basically did was I spent a lot of time trying to understand how those first generation malware work, how they were using IRC to actually run commands to that malware. And those were really early days, like we were talking about 2005.
Wow.
Where cybersecurity, even though I was quite young,
yes, cyber even at that time was not really a fully developed community. It was, I think, it was non-existent then, especially in the continent.
Yes. So one of the guys at the Linux user group, Selvan Pirabolan, everybody calls him Selvan. He was actually one of the first guys to actually experiment a lot with security, and he was basically giving me a lot of CDs around things like OpenBSD and things like that. So that was one of the first introductions to this. So to the whole idea of open source needing security. But let me tell you, if someone at the time told me that I would end up several years later contributing to open source project on a very large scale, I thought that the idea was crazy. I thought that guy was crazy. I never thought that sending code patches to open source project at the time would even get accepted. You know, and especially coming from Africa.
True,
right? So was quite an interesting times. You know, the ICT sector took off in Mauritius a bit earlier than other African countries. So we had call centers, we had all of things show up. So at some point, there were more user groups that started appearing, and basically Selvan and I and other people, due to various discussions that were happening, we decided to basically take the Linux community in Mauritius in a different direction, and it did lead to fragmentation, but that's a long discussion. And
that's a discussion I would actually really love to have, because even if you look in Africa from a cyber point of view, and I just think just generally all the communities, you notice fragmentation, which can be a good thing and a bad thing. So in Africa, you have SADC doing their own things, amazingly doing amazing things. You have the East Africa community doing their own things. You have ECOWAS also doing their own things. Then you have OIC also doing their own thing. So if you work for a regional body, so for my day job I work for FAST, Forum of Incident Response and Security Teams. So at times this fragmentation can be counterproductive, but at the same time this fragmentation allows specialized intervention specific for that domain or for that specific country. So I tend to tell people that it's a double-edged sword.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it's basically has its pros and cons.
Yeah.
So eventually, what happened was some people, including myself, left hackers.mu to start Cyberstorm.mu, and this is where we are currently at. Like, it's been 2017 till I think easily. Like, I'm surprised that Cyberstorm.mu has been running for so long. Like, I didn't think it would go beyond 2 years. I mean, since when we started in 2018, since when it's been more than 2 years actually.
Yeah, I know. You're almost doing what, 6 years?
6 years.
No, more than that actually. 8 years, almost 8 years.
Yeah, 8 years. I mean, it's been an interesting time. So one of the things that I'm trying to do is put enough structure there so that the group can run even when I'm not around. So I've been gradually handing off things, basically. So this is where we are currently at. And that's basically the career path that I took. I was very lucky to be able to join an African organization to work for the benefit of Africa. And, you know, it's one of the things that I think we need more in Africa is, as you said, the fragmentation is going to be there, right?
Yeah.
But something we really need to look into is to increase collaboration among different actors,
Yes.
as you've identified. Yeah.
True.
And this is where I think Cyberstorm, we can basically share what we've learned with other communities in Africa, and we can help them build those communities. Basically, we can help them do.
I'm very excited. One total agreement. I think collaboration is the next catalyst to take us to the next frontier. But I also say telling more over these stories. I'm 99% sure when we share this podcast with our wider community, there will be people who will be surprised that you mean we have these amazing communities of people in the continent doing A, B, C, and D. So the more our stories and similar stories like Cyberstorm stories are heard, for me, we are just not only documenting our African history, but we are also informally mentoring other people in the region and telling them that, hey, it's actually possible. Start small. We started small, and you have been running for You have been running for 8 years doing amazing work. So I'm really excited. I know in the various communities I work and collaborate with, I'll be rooting and telling them that, guys, we need to learn from Cyberstorm, and we need more of other Cyberstorms forming in different countries. Because at the end of the day, a lot of African teams use open source software, and we should be contributing to making that software more secure. We can't just talk of resilience without actually influencing and being part of that resilience pipeline.
Yes. I mean, I really enjoy this podcast right now. I mean, I think, Lawrence, you and I, we share a lot of things in common. What probably I can say is that it's also making sure that we Africans sit in open source development.
Yes.
We have our say in open source development, not in open source development, but also in open standards development, to make sure that Africa is there at the table when new protocols are being developed, new AI protocols are being developed. We need to make sure that those protocols are developed and those open source software, they fit in the current architecture of Africa.
Very true.
Yes.
Okay,
so,
Logan. Sorry.
Just one more thing I'd like to mention. There's quite an interesting growing community in Mauritius, and just one of the things that I'd like to mention, there's also another community, so there's quite a few smaller communities in Mauritius who are doing just as well. There's the PHP user group, they're doing quite well as well. They were at some point quite active. So we also have things called the AWS working group.
Okay.
So very focused on so we have quite a few number of small people leading. Not small, but like small groups that are doing things on and off in Mauritius as well, and we try to work with them. And there are larger communities than us. For example, there's a community called MSCC as well in Mauritius, with more broader craftsmanship. So there's also the CNCF community as well, which is more cloud native as well.
Okay.
So cloud technology as well. So there are quite a few sort of different communities in Mauritius. But I think one of the things in the case of Cyberstorm is that due to the historic context that we are living in, a number of historical factors and also economic and as well as geopolitical, where previously African companies and African government would tend to think of always relying on outside partners, but suddenly the governments and private sector were thinking about, okay, what's the problem if there are undersea cable cuts? caused by war.
True.
How do we keep this digital infrastructure in Africa running? And it so happens that, I know that there's a dev community in Kenya doing IETF work somewhat, right?
Yes.
And also like the community in Mauritius. We are one of the few communities who actually understand some of the protocol work and how to build resilient network system and build sovereign systems. So I would say that we are in Cyberstorm and other communities in South Africa and Kenya and Tanzania as well. We are in this very niche area where African governments and private sector companies will realize we have a dependency on systems that are outside of Africa. And when there's a problem, they don't quite know how to handle it. But what we're realizing is that communities like ours actually have the experience to fix those problems.
True, very true.
So this is why I think this is part of a reason of what led to Cyberstorm get sort of becoming known in Africa, because I've realized that when I travel to various conferences, people, especially like tech conferences, I was surprised to know about how many people know about us in Africa, and also people who don't know. But it get to that point where when we just started, when I would meet people, I would need to introduce myself and explain a little bit of what I was doing with Cyberstorm. But today, when I go to different places, even in Mauritius, people already know about it. Yeah, and that's funny. It's like, we know who you are. Okay, yeah, we know. Cyberstorm guys. Yeah, we know who you are. So that tends to put you in a sort of position of what I would say thought leadership.
Yes.
When people and government come to you and say, we have a problem, we're not sure how to go forward with this. Maybe you might be able to help us. And do you think that's the correct way forward? So those queries are starting to come to us, and it's something that starts small is growing from a very small 2% team grows to 27%, which is quite big in Mauritius, and now we're expanding to probably around 40 people. What's going to happen is that we're actually helping to build also the next generation of policymakers in Mauritius and Africa. So there's a lot of work to do in Africa. I think in Mauritius, in Congo, in South Africa, in all of those, in Kenya, there's a lot of work to do.
There is. And I'm happy we have folks like you actually trying to solve and prepare for that work when things finally align and fall in place.
So I think again we should have this discussion in I think different podcasts. So any other question that you have for me? Did I answer your question?
I think you covered everything. The only question I'll ask, and this is something I learned from one of the podcasts I listen that focuses on cyber diplomacy. So the question that I'm starting to ask people is, what question do you feel that I should have asked and I didn't ask?
Probably when am I going to retire and allow completely. So I was initially, when I started Cyberstorm, I was planning to hand over after 2 years, which I think is a reasonable amount of time. But now it's been 8 years, and one of the things that I have, very important message for the rest of the tech leaders, you need to know when to step away at some point when you build something. You need to learn to step away so that other people can join in and start doing the work. And right now I'm with the phase of I'm actually doing less of a leadership and delegating leadership inside Cyberstorm to basically a core team. And even though I may not agree with everything that's been decided, but I have trust in consensus-driven decisions within the team so that we can move forward. And this is something that a lot of tech leaders, not only in Africa, but also outside of Africa, have trouble going through. It's learning how to delegate and trust. And even if you don't exactly agree, you have to accept at some point people are going to make mistakes, but the most important thing for them is to learn from those mistakes.
True. Logan, thank you so much. It's been a very, it's been very, very insightful 80 minutes. Getting to briefly know about Cyberstorm, getting to briefly know about you, and I look forward to our next session. I think in the next session we'll figure out the topics that we'll need to cover. I have a feeling that these might go over multiple sessions and multiple podcasts. But again, thank you so much. Please pass my regards to the Cyberstorm team. Very happy with what they are doing. Please tell them to continue doing what they are doing. They are planting all the right seeds. And these seeds will help ensure that their work is also reflected in other countries and in other communities.
Yes, as you said, Lawrence, you put it very well. I think what we can do is basically take Cyberstorm, all the lessons that we've learned from this, and see if we can replicate that across Africa.
True.
I mean, there's so many people right now. Let me tell you, I'm soon going to work on a very important project that would benefit Africa.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping I can talk to you about it soon. But what about, in the central cities like Nairobi, it's well connected, right?
Yes.
But what about those who are unconnected? Yes,
exactly.
We have mobile. Yes. And I really hope that we have an African digital infrastructure where there's full inclusivity, meaning that everybody has access to a computer, everybody has access to the internet.
True.
And especially those remote areas. So this is one of the things that I'll probably be working on soon in a professional capacity. And I really look forward to working together with everybody in Africa to be able to connect the lost people who are still not connected to the internet, to open source.
Looking forward to that, looking forward to updates from that. And I know when that time comes, with my ISOC hat on, because I'm part of the ISOC Kenya chapter, I'm sure when you talk of community networks, connecting that unconnected, there will be a lot of synergy there.
And let me reach out to all our Kenyan listeners. I really look forward to be able to meet physically with your community. I know you have a very big community in Kenya, but I really look forward to work with you guys. You guys, let me tell you, you guys in Kenya are doing a lot. I mean, the rate of messages that you have in your technical group is I mean, when you guys are sending all of those, and thank you to all of you guys for sending those ebooks. Let me tell you that, because I'm actually using those ebooks and I share it with the rest of Cyberstorm community members. And I tell them I'm getting them from your group.
Thank you. So
that's, rather than us basically looking for it on the internet. You guys are already doing all the legwork together. And, I see a lot of infrastructure project that you guys are doing. If we can get together, if you won't have any question you think we can help you guys with, we're more than happy to do that.
Very, very happy to hear that, and Logan, thank you for offering that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Logan. I know it's almost 10 p.m. your side.
Yes.
But thank you for creating the time, and allow me to wish you a restful evening and all the best as we continue building Cyberstorm.
Yes. Thanks to you. Same to you, Lawrence.
Bye for now.
Bye.